Locomotive number 2101 was built by the Reading Railroad in their own shops in Reading, Pennsylvania. The second of 30 of these state-of-the-art 484 locomotives, she was built in September 1945 and assigned the Reading Railroad's classification T1. After a career of hauling freight and coal, she became the backup engine for the Reading Railroad's Iron Horse Rambles excursion trains. 2101 was never actually used on the Rambles and was retired and sold for scrap in 1967. 2101 sat rusting away in a scrapyard near Baltimore, Maryland, till 1975, when she was rescued for use as one of the American Freedom Train's locomotives. She was moved to the former Baltimore and Ohio Railroad's Riverside shops, where a group of dedicated volunteers and professionals brought her back to life in just 31 days. 2101 was named America 1, and along with the Southern Pacific Daylight engine number 4449, headed up the American Freedom Train as it toured the United States in 1976 to celebrate our nation's 200th anniversary. The Freedom Train ended its cross-country tour in Washington, D.C. in time for the celebration of our nation's 200th birthday. The Freedom Train included several specially modified cars that displayed many important icons of our nation's history. .4449 joined America 1 and the Freedom Train for its final display in Washington, D.C. The train was spotted on a siding at Roslyn Branch near the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. In these scenes we watch as America 1 and 4449 are placed on the siding for the final showing of this historic train. It's not surprising that a lot of people came out to watch this once-in-a-lifetime event. great performance for the Freedom train, it was arranged for 2101 to pull the Chessie Steam Special. She was sent back to the shops for some much-needed maintenance, repainted in the Chessie Steam Special colors, and given back her true identity. The Chessie Steam Special ran to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1977. The Steam Special was so successful, it returned for another excursion season the following year. In this segment of the program, you'll see 2101 pulling the Chessie Steam Special through portions of Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. This segment shows scenes that were shot in 1977 and 1978, and will take us to places along the former Baltimore and Ohio Railroad's Metropolitan Division, the Camden Division, the Old Main Line Division, and the Cumberland Division, as well as the Western Maryland Railway's Dutch Line in Maryland and southern Pennsylvania. Our first trip takes us to a few choice locations on the Metropolitan Division. This route travels through the Maryland suburbs between Washington, D.C. and Weaverton, Maryland, just west of Brunswick, Maryland. At Weaverton, the train enters the Cumberland Division for the remainder of the trip to historic Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Our first stop is in Gaithersburg, Maryland on the Metropolitan Division. The train made a brief stop here to pick up passengers. Here at Buck Lodge, the train made a stop for a photo run-by. At a photo run-by, the train stops and lets passengers off. It then backs up and runs by so the passengers can get pictures of the train in action. This trip's final destination was Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. The train went on to Martinsburg, West Virginia, to be turned in service for the return trip, while passengers enjoyed some time shopping and sightseeing in historic Harpers Ferry. Harpers Ferry is on the Cumberland Division, where the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers meet. We're at Barnesville, Maryland now on the return trip. Here the train has to climb the steepest grade on the Metropolitan Division as it heads back to our nation's capital. We move now to the Camden and Old Main Line divisions. After leaving Washington, the train headed up the Camden Division to Relay, Maryland. At Relay, the train transferred to the Old Main Line Division for the trip west to Harpers Ferry. Our first stop is in Beltsville, Maryland on the Camden Division. Here, U.S. Route 1 parallels the tracks and gave us a great opportunity to ride alongside. Our next stop is the Thomas Viaduct at Relay, Maryland. Named for Philip L. Thomas, the president of the B&O Railroad, it was completed in 1835 and stretches 612 feet long over the Patapsco River. It stands here today exactly as it did when completed almost 2 centuries ago. In 1830, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad operated the first commercial rail service in the United States. This service ran 13 miles from the B&O's Mount Clair Station in Baltimore to this point, known then as Ellicott's Mill. The name was later changed to Ellicott City. At Henryton, we found some folks that came to see the Chessie Steam Special in style. Here the train passes through a 431-foot long tunnel. At Mount Airy, the train reaches the highest point on the old main line division. At one time, the tracks climbed a very steep grade to get over Parr's Ridge. In order to lessen the grade, a 2,758-foot long tunnel was cut under the south end of Mount Airy. We're at Frederick Junction now, where a branch leads north to Frederick, Maryland. There, the line links up with the former Pennsylvania Railroad. The Chessie Steam Special stopped here for another great photo run-by. Our next stop is Point of Rocks, Maryland. Located along the Potomac River, this is where the old Main Line Division ends as it meets the Metropolitan Division. As on the previous trip, the train went on to Harper's Ferry and Martinsburg, West Virginia for servicing. We head out now for the Western Maryland Railway's Dutch Line. This division starts in Baltimore, Maryland, and heads north into Pennsylvania before it turns west to historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The line then heads back into Maryland and ends at Hagerstown, Maryland. Our first stop of the day takes us to New Oxford, Pennsylvania. While we wait for the Chessie Steam Special, we catch an eastbound freight with 3 diesels painted in the classic Western Maryland red, white, and black paint scheme. It hasn't been long since the mergers that formed the Chessie System, and many locomotives still haven't been repainted yet. These vintage F units were brought out especially for this trip. They were run ahead of the Chessie Steam Special to give it a little help on the steep, twisting grades on Jack's Mountain. After leaving New Oxford, the track runs along U.S. Route 30 as we head into historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Our next stop is Fairfield, Pennsylvania, where the train makes a stop for a photo run-by. The F units have been coupled on to help get the train over Jack's Mountain. We catch up with the train again in Hagerstown, Maryland, where the locomotive and train were serviced and turned for the return trip. Operated by the Western Maryland Railway, Hagerstown Yard also served other major railroads, including the Baltimore and Ohio, Norfolk and Western, Reading, and the Pennsylvania. 2101 pulled the Chessie Steam Special for 2 years. While being stored in a roundhouse in Silver Grove, Kentucky in the winter of 1978 and 79, a fire broke out and the roundhouse was seriously damaged. The fire took its toll on 2101 and she was damaged beyond repair. This brought an end to the Chessie Steam Specials and the operating life of 2101. 2101 was cosmetically restored and repainted in her Freedom Train livery and moved to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum in Baltimore, Maryland, where she can be seen today. We'll be right back after this message. Today's program is brought to you on RFD TV by Heavy Metal Thunder Productions. Be sure and visit hmtpvideo.com to learn how you can have your very own copy of today's show. That's www.hmtpvideo.com for more information about this and other great railfan videos from Heavy Metal Thunder Productions. The B&O Museum had a Chesapeake and Ohio Greenbrier number 614 on display that was in pretty good shape. Arrangements were made by the Chessie System to have it traded as a replacement for 2101. After an extensive restoration, 614 returned to the rails in 1981 to pull the Chessie Safety Express. In this next segment, we'll follow the Safety Express as it leaves Brunswick, Maryland and heads for Washington, D.C. The train then headed up the Camden Division to Relay, Maryland, where it transferred to the Old Main Line Division. From here, it headed west through Point of Rocks and into Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. It then returned to Washington by way of the Metropolitan Division. We start our trip in Brunswick, Maryland. It's early morning as 614 heads her train out to begin a great day of steam railroading. The train heads down the Metropolitan Division to Washington, D.C. to start the day's trip. We're back at Thomas Viaduct as we watch 614 highball her train into Relay, Maryland. Back on the Old Main Line Division, where we catch the Safety Express as it exits the tunnel at Henryton. While waiting for the Safety Express, we catch a freight headed west on the Metropolitan Division. The train stopped briefly in Brunswick to pick up some riders. At one time, Brunswick was a major division point on the B&O Railroad. Here at Weaverton, the Metropolitan Division ends and the Cumberland Division begins. As was done with the Chessie Steam Special, at Harper's Ferry the passengers had the opportunity to leave the train and do some shopping and exploring, while the train went on to Martinsburg, West Virginia to be serviced in turn for the return trip. Before the train left for Martinsburg, we were treated to a great photo run-by opportunity. While the Safety Express was being serviced, we got to watch the Amtrak Capital Limited and a freight go through. Serviced and turned for the trip back to our nation's capital, the Safety Express returns to Harper's Ferry to pick up its passengers. At Sandy Hook, we get a chance to ride alongside as 614 gathers speed in front of a setting sun. It's getting darker now as we catch the Safety Express for one last time.